What kind, boy?
Here we got Matty Balls. How MTV ruined their platform, boy. It's been so long since I heard about MTV, boy. They used to run
It
shit.
seems like just yesterday, MTV was the go-to place to consume music videos, other music-related
Turtle
content,
Prince is
and
crazy,
classic
boy.
TV shows like Cribs, Pimp My Ride, Jersey Shore, and many more. But this has left people with a few questions, such as, why did MTV stop posting music-related content? How come MTV only plays ridiculousness these days? And what happened to the network that we all used to love? Well, to understand this, we have to go back to the inception of MTV. MTV was one of the pioneers of the music video, however, they were not the first. I'm not going to get into the whole history.
I ain't gonna lie, this new look is kinda crazy,
But
Matty
apparently
Balls.
the first ever music
Matt
video
Star.
was created in 1894 using something called a magic lantern. Throughout the 1900s, especially later into the century, obviously, music videos and black and white documentaries with music became a common occurrence, alongside cartoons with music like silly symphonies and merry melodies. They also had things called talkies, and this whole era was it just sounded so goofy looking back at it. Anyways, they started putting music videos on TV, especially after colored TVs came out, and that's where MTV
Damn, music videos been a thing since then, boy. Don't
in
fuck it up.
1981, Warner Communications quite literally launched MTV, which is short for music television. The first music video they played was for Video Killed the Radio Star by the Buggles, which I assume had to have
What
been
the
intentional. They also had something called video jockeys, also known as VJs,
The
who were
Buggles,
basically
boy.
music video DJs. They would play popular music videos 24/7, which entirely changed the landscape of the music industry. Like I said, music videos were fairly rare and weren't really popular at that time. Unlike nowadays, where pretty much every artist has to drop a music video to pair with their song as part of their marketing to make it blow up. Eventually, every single big artist at the time began creating and releasing music videos on MTV. Def Leppard, The Cars, Michael Jackson, U2, Van Halen, Prince, and pretty much everyone else from that era. A lot of people believe that Michael Jackson's videos for songs like Thriller and Beat It are a big reason that MTV grew so much. MTV was a station that you could just throw on and see multiple music videos from tons of big artists, some you might like, some you might dislike, and some artists that you might discover. As MTV continued growing, more and more labels and their artists began to appear on the network. Then in 1984, they hosted the first ever MTV Video Music Awards, now known as the VMAs. Basically, this was just an award show to pick one music video that was the best of the year.
I ain't gonna lie,
At the
that's
first
what
ever
they're known
VMA,
for today now. Like, the VMAs, that's the only shit like they known for.
Michael
bruh.
Jackson rightfully swept up a bunch of awards for Thriller. Bob Pittman, who was one of the co-founders of MTV, said, "As MTV began to be a success, you then start worrying about what's our franchise. And what we knew was we didn't want other people to be giving out awards for video music and making it sort of a commodity. We wanted video music to be completely synonymous with MTV, so we knew we needed to do an award show." And I think that is the best way to explain early MTV, because music videos at the time were synonymous with this station. They also started rotating different types of music videos throughout the day, like new videos, breakout videos, light, medium, and heavy videos. I'm not quite sure what they meant by light, medium, and heavy. Maybe some of you old folks in the comments can let me know. I'm just kidding, by the way, but I'm guessing it was songs from established artists or small artists or something like that. MTV also started doing artist profiles as well.
What the fuck is this?
As the 80s were coming to a close, MTV had launched things like MTV News, where they interviewed artists and covered news predominantly about the music industry. However, they did touch on pop culture things as well. MTV really was the go-to community hub to find new music, listen to songs you already liked, watch some cool videos, keep up with the music world, and learn more about your favorite artists. I mean, they had a ton of great exclusive video interviews back in the day with artists like Tupac, David Bowie, and many more. Old MTV was like if YouTube and all of its cool creative content about music was all condensed into one sort of TV station, and it was also the first of its kind. However, around this time they also began expanding into more pop culture related topics, launching shows like House of Style that was about supermodels, and Remote Control, which was a game show. This was the first time MTV had made any shows about anything not directly related to the music industry. So clearly there was a shift happening, and they were experimenting with other sorts of content. In May of 1992, MTV launched The Real World, which was an unscripted reality show that became one of their biggest shows ever. and they began to see a lot of success outside of just music videos. It was a show about 7 younger people who they put into a house and had them live together, which became very entertaining. MTV is even
So like a content house, you
credited
said?
with creating modern reality TV. And by the end of the 90s, MTV had decreased the amount of music videos they were showing by 37%. And it makes sense too if you think about it, because things like reality TV and pop culture related things are a bit more appealing to a slightly wider audience. Sure, music is appealing to everybody, but as soon as people heard songs they didn't like, there was a good chance they would just quit watching. The LA Times even said that MTV's audience was elusive, fickle, and had a lack of loyalty, which made it tricky for MTV to maintain their audience. The president of MTV at the time, Van Toffers, said, "Clearly the novelty of just showing music videos has worn off. It's required us to reinvent ourselves to a contemporary audience." And reinvent themselves is exactly what MTV did in the 2000s. By this point, MTV was huge, reaching over 77 million households in the United States. And they decided to expand out of just music-related content. They began to make adult animated TV shows, such as Beavis and Butthead and Daria, both of which were very popular, along with a handful of other shows. In 1996, they launched a channel called M2, which was entirely dedicated to music, as they were shifting the main network's focus to other things. However, M2 was not very successful. They still were doing music, and even started a show called Total Request Live, where they would play the 10 most requested music videos every day. And eventually it actually became one of MTV's most viewed shows. It was a live show hosted by Carson Daly and was extremely successful, with fans popping out right outside the studio to catch a glimpse of their favorite artists. Total Request Live really was like the last bastion of relevant music content that MTV was putting out, with tons of great collabs, fun ideas, and a bunch of creative music-related television. Around this time, MTV executives even said, "I think in the dead center of the music industry, TRL is certainly maybe the most important thing at the moment for those top 10 artists." Of course, they're a little bit biased, but I'm sure that it was fairly true. This helped MTV for a while when it came to their music-related content and maintaining audience interest. But then they pretty much moved away from music-related stuff in the 2000s, and this was for a few reasons. According to an interview with Los Angeles Times, in the 90s, MTV stumbled and lost its hold on this audience a couple of years ago, but after some self-examination and redirection, the channel was again hitting the bullseye. They were worth $8 billion and were one of the most profitable networks on TV. Them moving from just music videos to reality television and live shows like TRL really catapulted MTV back into mainstream success. And obviously, because that's where the money's at, they wanted to double down.
$8 billion back then is crazy,
on
bro.
this method. Throughout the 2000s, MTV started putting out shows like A Shot at Love with Tila Tequila, Fear, Jackass, Pimp My Ride, Jersey Shore, and many more. Jersey Shore in particular was one of the most popular shows that they had ever put out. They also had shows like Teen Mom and Catfish that were also super popular. And you can't lie, even when they weren't just doing music content, MTV had a ton of classic and iconic shows on their network. Cribs, Punk'd, Pimp My Ride, Jackass, all of these were iconic for different reasons. To this day, we still got Sunny V2 making videos exposing them for faking some of this stuff. But again, a lot of these didn't have to do with music, which is what MTV was originally about, hence the M in MTV. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, when I was a kid, I thought MTV was literally just a pop culture platform with reality TV shows and things like that. I had no idea that originally it was just entirely a music-related network. I was growing up during the MTV Cribs era and all those other shows, and as a kid, I didn't personally associate music itself with MTV as much as I did pop culture. Again though, at the time, this was not a bad thing. It was doing wonders for the network and bringing in entire new audiences. Plus, by this point, YouTube had already been developed and began growing. The internet had taken over, and there really was no point in watching music videos on a TV network. The same way that websites like LimeWire and Napster destroyed the music industry and they were forced to reinvent themselves, YouTube destroyed MTV. Think about it. Would you rather watch a station where you can't skip songs that you don't like and you have to watch the videos regardless of what it is, or would you rather just go on the internet or to YouTube and search for record exactly what you want or have the option to skip whenever you want, and basically just have full control. Clearly, the old MTV format was
MTV
outdated.
should have made a
Even one of the
website then,
original
boy.
video jockeys, Alan Hunter, said, once YouTube came to be, it was all over. YouTube was MTV on steroids, minus the VJs. I found a comment from a fan who said, I'm Gen X and grew up on MTV. I stopped watching when they stopped showing music, although I liked early Real World and some of the other shows like Liquid Television, but now I can just watch any music video I want on YouTube. And I know a lot of people say MTV died because they stopped playing music, which is definitely a factor, but had they kept their old format without changing anything, the platform would have died regardless. So MTV adapting to reality shows and programs like Total Request Live was clearly the move, and they were benefiting from it greatly. But then things took a turn for the worse for MTV. On November 16th of 2008, Total Request Live ended, likely because Carson Daly left. And like I said, this was one of MTV's last music-related programs. Just a couple of years later, MTV dropped music television from their logo, clearly signifying that they were pretty much done with music. Like the LA Times said, outside of its annual VMAs Music Video Award show, and with the cancellation of TRL, MTV has long abandoned music as a programming mainstay. For years, all eyes have been on genre-busting reality shows like The Osbournes, Newlyweds, Jackass, My Super Sweet 16, and The Hills. The following year, in 2011, MTV released the show Ridiculousness, which would alter the course of MTV forever. The show was hosted by Rob Dyrdek, and basically it just showed random funny viral videos off the internet. Ridiculousness was very popular when it first came out, which ended up not being a good thing for MTV, because over the years, as they stopped making other sorts of content and series, it ended up being the only thing that MTV would air. I mean, look at this airing schedule in 2021. It is literally all ridiculousness. I guess you could say that the schedule was ridiculous.
Back-to-back Rush Hour for 2 days in a row is crazy too, boy. Bad Boys. Goddamn, Bad Boys marathonics, eh?
Ridiculousness. I guess you could say that the schedule was ridiculous. I'm not going to say that. That's not funny. However, in 2020, a journalist named John Gonzalez even wrote an entire long-ass article titled How Did MTV Become the Ridiculousness Network?, in which he covered the extent to which they were milking the show. By the 2010s, MTV was basically reduced to a funny clips TV station that you're forced to watch when nothing else is on at a hotel. It was not going well, and their ratings were falling to an all-time low. At this point, most fans had probably forgotten about MTV, and the younger generation probably had no idea about the impact that MTV once had. They probably just knew MTV for reality TV shows and some mediocre pop culture related TV shows. It wasn't even the fact that they stopped playing music videos, it was the fact that they lost touch with their roots and weren't trying to evolve with the times. Instead, they opted for low-hanging fruit television shows like Ridiculousness and just decided to rerun it constantly. But then, in 2016, a new CEO named Chris McCarthy took over and tried to change things for the better.
The secret is we're leaning back into our strengths. You know, we have an incredible brand with 95% brand awareness. We have one of the largest libraries of youth and music IP in the history of television, and we have a creative culture that is one of the best in terms of storytelling. And we leaned back into that about 2 years ago when I took over, and really turned the ship around rather quickly. We reversed a 5-year rating decline in just 8 months, and today we're actually leading the industry in growth.
Things were going a little bit better than before, but that isn't saying much. In 2017, they brought back Total Request Live in an attempt to go back to their roots, but that too was outdated. After just 2 years, the show ended in 2019. What seemed to be the final nail in the coffin was in 2023 when they laid off 25% of their domestic staff and shut down MTV News, one of the earliest and longest running programs MTV had. The only thing MTV still really has that has some sort of cultural significance is the VMAs, which ironically enough is still music related. Despite the new CEO's efforts, returning to their roots had failed, and MTV is just a shell of what it once was. The network had lasted for many decades, with many different types of cultural impact, from revolutionizing the music industry and music videos to essentially creating reality TV and putting out tons of classic TV shows. MTV did have a very long and successful run. However, they couldn't keep up with the times, they couldn't evolve, and rather than keep coming up with new ideas,
I won't lie, that's the downfall of a lot of companies, bro.
Over and over and over again. Like I said, YouTube
like not being able to evolve with the times type
failed,
shit.
and one of the most iconic music video platforms on YouTube was Vivo, who I did an entire video about. So if you guys are interested about Vivo and the downfall of Vivo as well, make sure to check out this video that's on screen right now.
To watch this shit, boy. Finding South Africa's best Gatsby, boy. I need to watch that shit.
Funny for this video. And if you liked it, make sure to leave a like. And
hey, shout out to Matty Balls, boy. Fire video.